Welcome to Insights. I'm Adam Rivers.
And I'm Sarah Collins. In this episode, we'll reflect carefully on the Quran verse by verse, focusing on wording, context, and coherence. In our previous discussions, we mapped out the stark opening of Surah Al-Baqarah. We saw three distinct human responses to revelation: the believers who embrace it, the disbelievers who reject it entirely, and the hypocrites who are trapped in an exhausting cycle of deception, walking in flashes of lightning only to be frozen in darkness.
Right, exactly.
So I guess that brings us to where we are now.
Yeah, today we arrive at verse 21. O mankind, worship your Lord, who created you and those before you, that you may become righteous. After 20 verses of intensely analyzing other people's conditions, why does the revelation suddenly turn and speak directly to us?
Well, to really understand the sheer psychological impact of this verse, I want you to imagine a very specific scenario. Picture yourself at the end of a long, incredibly demanding week, you know? You are sitting on your comfortable couch in your quiet living room, the lights are dimmed low, and you are entirely absorbed in watching a highly acclaimed, gripping medical documentary on television.
Sounds relaxing.
Right. The narrator has this calm, clinical voice, and the screen is filled with detailed analyses of patients suffering from a complex, devastating disease. You watch the terrible symptoms manifest on the screen, you listen to the tragic case studies, and you intellectually dissect the behavior of the people who, well, foolishly ignored the early warning signs.
Yeah, playing the armchair expert.
Exactly. In that specific moment, sitting in the dark, you feel completely secure. You are perfectly safe. You are merely a spectator, an observer, comfortably insulated by the thick glass of the screen separating you from the painful reality of the illness. You might even find yourself silently judging the patients, wondering how they let it get so bad.
Yeah.
But then imagine the most jarring thing possible happens. The lead doctor on the screen suddenly stops speaking to the off-camera interviewer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he slowly turns his head, looks directly through the camera lens, raises his hand, and points straight at you sitting on your couch. And with chilling clarity, he says, "Now let's talk about your test results."
That's terrifying.
That moment of terrifying realization completely shatters your comfort zone, doesn't it? The safe distance entirely collapses. You are absolutely not a spectator anymore. You are the patient. So, how does this specific verse do exactly that to you as you read the revelation?
That's a really powerful way to look at it, because the first 20 verses act as a brilliant, meticulous setup. They purposefully allowed you to comfortably spectate and pass judgment on those three distinct groups: the believers, the disbelievers, and the hypocrites.
Right, the whole theoretical distance thing?
Yeah, exactly. You were given the luxury to analyze their deeply flawed conditions from a safe theoretical distance. But verse 21 abruptly and completely drops that third-person narrative. It violently strips away the soothing comfort of theoretical classification and places you directly into the intensely glaring arena of the address, forcing a personal, serious choice upon you.
It is such a sudden removal of our emotional armor. We spend so much of our lives comfortably operating in that third-person space.
Oh, absolutely.
We love to diagnose society's ills, you know? We love to look at history and point out exactly where previous generations went wrong. We even do it in our personal lives. We look at our colleagues, our neighbors, or our family members and easily identify their hypocrisies or their stubbornness.
It's human nature.
It is. It is incredibly easy and honestly quite comforting to be the armchair psychologist. When we were walking through the previous verses looking at the elaborate deceptions of the hypocrites, it was almost satisfying to see them exposed. We could sit back and think, wow, look at how lost those people are.
Yeah, we felt immune.
Right, we felt immune. But this pivot, this sudden shift to "O mankind," it essentially reaches through the pages of the Qur'an, grabs us by the shoulders, and demands our undivided attention. Why is that specific, jarring psychological shock so necessary for the listener at this exact moment in the revelation?
It is necessary because human beings naturally use intellectual analysis as a sophisticated defense mechanism. If you can keep the truth at an arm's length, analyzing it purely as an abstract concept, you never actually have to change your internal behavior.
That's so true.
The revelation refuses to let you stay in that sterile academic environment. By speaking directly to you, it transforms the knowledge from a passive observation into an active, urgent diagnosis of your own soul. The theoretical framework immediately becomes a mirror reflecting your own reality.
That makes perfect sense. If it didn't forcefully pull you out of the audience and onto the stage, you could easily read the entire Qur'an as a fascinating historical or sociological document without ever letting it penetrate your own heart. It is the ultimate wake-up call to personal accountability. You can no longer hide behind the mistakes of others. You have to answer the call yourself. But as we absorb the shock of how this address is made, this sudden, direct finger pointing at us from the screen, we need to look closer at exactly who is being summoned in this moment.
Right.
Because the verse doesn't just say you in a vacuum, it uses a very specific phrase.
Well, before we look at the exact who, we have to ask a foundational question. Who actually needs the cure?
Okay.
The phrase used here is, O mankind. It deliberately does not say, O believers, or O children of Israel, or any other exclusive identifier. It addresses the human purely as a human, completely stripping away all secondary accumulated identities, your tribal affiliations, your financial social status, your cultural heritage. None of it matters.
Right, it just cuts through all that.
Exactly. It breaks down the fragile illusions of artificial superiority. And here's a profoundly beautiful fact. Even after utterly exposing the horrifying internal disease of the hypocrites in the previous verses, this universal call means the door of treatment is still wide open to them.
Wait, so after completely undressing their deception and diagnosing them as diseased, the revelation doesn't banish them, it still invites them in.
Yes, exactly. That is the unmatched mercy of the Qur'an compared to standard human diagnosis. When humans diagnose you with a severe flaw, they typically leave you crushed under the heavy weight of that label, permanently casting you out.
Wow, yeah.
The revelation certainly exposes the illness with brutal clarity, but it never abandons you to it. It exposes the illness solely to open the door to the exact path that saves you. The invitation to heal remains universally available to anyone willing to step through it.
That completely overturns everything we know about how judgment usually works in our modern society. I mean, we live in a world where your worst mistake, once exposed, becomes your permanent identity.
Without a doubt.
If you are caught in a massive deception, society places a heavy, irremovable label on your forehead and swiftly shuts you out of the room forever. You are effectively canceled. There is no path back.
Yeah, it's pretty ruthless.
It is. But here, the ultimate authority in the universe does the exact opposite. It isn't a final, echoing slam of the judge's gavel signaling the definitive end of your story. It is a profound, incredibly urgent medical intervention fundamentally designed to save your life. It gives you this overwhelming, sustaining sense of hope.
It really does.
No matter how deep into the darkness you might have wandered, no matter how tangled you are in your own complex webs of deception like the hypocrites wandering in the dark flashes of lightning, the divine invitation to heal is still actively, patiently calling your name. It addresses the core humanity beneath all the broken layers. So if the door is still miraculously open to absolutely everyone, what is this actual path? What is the comprehensive cure that mankind is being actively called to step into?
The central word here, the absolute core of the cure itself, is worship. This is the very first direct command given in Surah Al-Baqarah. It is the highly practical, completely actionable answer to the desperate plea made back in Al-Fatiha when you asked to be guided.
Okay.
The act of worship is the tangible vehicle for that guidance.
But let's critically examine that word because worship carries so much heavy, often misunderstood cultural baggage today.
It really does, yeah.
Imagine you have a coworker in a massive corporate office who mindlessly checks boxes on a complex spreadsheet all day long. They go through the physical, repetitive motions of their job flawlessly. Their daily attendance is perfect. Their reports are formatted correctly, but their mind is completely somewhere else.
Right, totally checked out.
Exactly. They honestly couldn't care less about the company's core mission, and they feel absolutely no genuine loyalty to the work they are producing. They are just surviving the clock. If worship is understood merely as going through physical, ritualistic motions, like checking boxes on a religious spreadsheet or performing a routine set of physical movements to appease a community, wouldn't the hypocrites have easily passed the test? I mean, they were, after all, physically present in the gatherings and mirroring the visible actions of the believers.
That's a great point. You are exactly right to point out that discrepancy. Worship here is absolutely not a narrow, disconnected ritual or a hollow physical routine.
Right.
It is the complete, radical reforging of the relationship between the human and the Creator. It means executing a massive internal shift from a self-centric life to a God-centric life, where your personal desires and shifting societal standards are no longer your hidden masters.
Wow.
This true holistic servitude is the actual definitive dividing line between the sincere believers and the hypocrites.
That distinction is incredibly sharp, and honestly, it is deeply intimidating when you really let it sink in. It means you can be doing all the supposedly right things on the outside. You can be standing in the right places, saying the exact right words, projecting the absolute perfect image of piety to everyone around you. But if your internal compass is still secretly pointing toward your own inflated ego, or your insatiable desire for wealth, or the exhausting need for the approval of society,
you haven't really done anything.
right, you haven't actually entered into the reality of true worship at all. It is a complete recalibration of your entire being. It forces you to ask, who or what am I fundamentally trying to please with my limited time on earth? It takes the concept of religion away from being a mere cultural performance and turns it into an intense private reality.
Exactly.
So if true worship requires this monumental, life-altering shift in your core allegiance, the natural next step is to examine who we are offering this allegiance to. We need to look at the specific, deliberate title used for God in this pivotal command.
Well, why does the specific title matter so much when you're being given an ultimate command?
Yeah, why does it?
I have to counter by explaining the intentional choice of your Lord. It isn't just a cold title of naked power or distant authority. The concept of rububiyyah deeply implies the ultimate nurturer, sustainer, educator, and caretaker. It establishes an intensely personal, ongoing relationship.
Oh, I see.
And this leads to a profound reality. Rejecting this servitude to God does not magically make a human free. It simply guarantees they will inevitably become a miserable, exhausted slave to something else entirely: money, societal approval, ego, or shifting desires. True worship is actually liberation, not slavery.
Hold on. Are you saying absolute human freedom is a complete myth? If we aren't serving the Creator, we are inevitably serving a lesser, fake Lord.
That is exactly the inescapable reality that the Qur'an is exposing. Humans are fundamentally designed to serve an ultimate ideal. The command to worship isn't some degrading insult to your human dignity. Rather, it is a desperate, necessary rescue mission.
A rescue mission.
Yes. It actively frees you from the relentless exhaustion of serving multiple, shifting, false masters that will endlessly demand your energy but never actually nurture you in return. It anchors you securely to the one sustainer who actually cares for your well-being.
That is a staggering paradigm shift for anyone listening right now. We spend our whole lives tirelessly chasing this highly idealized vision of absolute independence.
We really do.
We are constantly told by every advertisement, every movie, and every cultural milestone that true success means being the absolute master of your own destiny, bowing to no one, and answering only to your own internal compass. But the reality this verse exposes is that we are just unknowingly trading one set of visible divine guidelines for an invisible, incredibly chaotic set of chains.
That's a great way to phrase it.
We might fiercely believe we are free, but in reality we are desperate slaves to our corporate career trajectory, entirely beholden to our fluctuating social media metrics, or completely paralyzed by our own relentless anxieties and insecurities. We serve the algorithm, we serve the fashion trends, we serve the expectations of our peers.
It's exactly.
Recognizing that our very psychological architecture is naturally wired for servitude, and deliberately choosing the absolute only master who actually nurtures and protects us is the ultimate life hack for achieving genuine mental and spiritual freedom. It is a profound relief to stop pretending we are gods of our own little universes.
It really is.
So how does this deeply comforting realization of being a nurtured servant relate to the immediate, somewhat jarring mention of physical creation that follows right after in the verse?
Well, the verse specifically follows up by saying, "Who created you?" The profound command to worship isn't just handed down in an intellectual vacuum.
Right.
By directly tying this overarching command to the literal, undeniable biological fact of your creation, the revelation entirely shatters human arrogance. You didn't invent yourself out of nothing. You didn't design the complex chambers of your own heart to beat. Nor did you engineer your lungs to draw breath from the air.
Let's firmly ground this deeply philosophical concept in a modern, highly relatable scenario to make it crystal clear.
Yeah.
Imagine you are an amateur programmer who arrogantly decides to completely rewrite a highly complex, enterprise-level software program that runs a major city's entire infrastructure.
Oh boy.
Right. You have absolutely no idea how the original genius developer coded it. You don't know the foundational architecture, and you completely lack an understanding of the intricate hidden dependencies within the millions of lines of code. You just start blindly deleting vital lines and adding your own random commands simply because you think you know better than the creator.
That's a recipe for disaster.
Exactly. The entire program is going to crash instantly, taking the whole city system down with it in a catastrophic failure. Isn't it just fundamental, undeniable logic that the original programmer, the one who painstakingly built the entire intricate system from scratch, knows best how to fix the inevitable bugs, optimize the daily performance, and write the ultimate definitive user manual for that system?
That is a perfect, highly accurate analogy for the human condition. And notice exactly why the verse specifically says created you in a direct, intimate second-person address rather than relying on a generalized phrase like created humanity.
Oh, yeah.
It forces total, inescapable personal accountability right onto your individual shoulders. It actively prevents you from turning the undeniable concept of creation into a cold, distant philosophical debate. It makes your daily, practical response to the command of worship an absolute existential necessity, not just a formal duty.
It makes the entire concept so intimately personal that it almost takes your breath away. It is not just about a grand, sweeping scientific theory regarding the biological origin of the human species. It is intensely about your specific miraculous origin, your unique consciousness, your daily breath. It demands an immediate, tangible response from you, the individual listening right now, because you are the direct, living recipient of this immense, continuous creative act. Every single time your heart beats in your chest, it is a quiet, undeniable reminder of that absolute dependency on the nurturing Lord.
That's beautifully put.
But just as soon as you begin to deeply feel the immense heavy weight of that intensely personal creation, you notice the verse immediately expands the camera lens. It zooms out from your single individual self to the vast, almost incomprehensible expanse of the human past. Why are our distant, entirely forgotten ancestors suddenly brought into this deeply personal, quiet moment of realization?
The specific phrase, "and those before you," does something psychologically incredible to the reader. This very short phrase completely shatters the widespread, deeply ingrained human illusion of temporal centrality.
Temporal centrality, right.
Every single generation naturally thinks they are the absolute pinnacle of human history, the definitive center of the universe. This teaches profound, grounding humility. You suddenly realize you are just one tiny link in a massive chain. Furthermore, mentioning those before you carries a hidden, heavy reminder of your own mortality. They lived, they thought they were permanent, and now they're just fading memories.
Wait, so this isn't just a history lesson, it's a subtle reminder of our own expiration date.
Precisely. Remembering your temporary, fleeting status on this earth makes the daily act of worship infinitely deeper and more sincere. It strips away the delusion that you have endless time to submit.
Wow.
It also categorically proves that this specific call to worship isn't some new, localized cultural trend. It is the continuous, cosmic, fundamental function of the human being throughout all of recorded time and across every single civilization.
That realization truly puts the modern ego firmly in check. We get so easily, almost comically caught up in the frantic drama of our present moment. We deeply believe that our generation's unique problems, our technological triumphs, and our daily stresses are the absolute most important things to ever happen in the history of the cosmos.
We really do.
But when we're forced to vividly visualize those endless, countless generations before us, billions upon billions of people who loved passionately, fought bitterly, built massive empires, worried intensely about their children's futures, and ultimately returned to the silent dust of the earth, we realize our time on this grand stage is incredibly brief.
It's just a blink of an eye.
Your only real lasting legacy, the absolute only thing that actually connects your brief spark of life to eternal reality, is this shared, continuous, cosmic function of worship. It binds you to the first human and to the last. So if we look at this entire magnificent conceptual structure being built layer by layer in just a few words, the universal human call, the nurturing Lord, the intimate personal creation, the sprawling human history, where is this all ultimately leading us? What is the final destination of this incredible journey we are being taken on?
All of this careful, deliberate, foundational work leads to a very specific, beautiful destination. That you may become righteous, or in the vocabulary of the Qur'an, attain taqwa. There is a brilliant logical progression happening here.
Okay, how so?
You absolutely cannot just miraculously plant the seed of taqwa into your heart in a total psychological vacuum. You fundamentally need the existential and psychological preparation of deeply recognizing your creator and humbly accepting your incredibly small place in human history first, before that genuine righteousness can ever take root and grow.
That deeply psychological progression takes me right back to the very beginning of the surah, which we analyzed so closely before. It boldly started by declaring itself guidance for the muttaqin, or guidance for the righteous.
Right, exactly.
Sometimes when you first read that opening line, it feels entirely exclusive, almost like a closed door you don't have the key for. It can feel like you are standing outside a walled garden, looking in at the people who already have their lives together. Does this specific verse we are looking at today definitively prove that taqwa isn't some elite, inaccessible VIP club that you have to be lucky enough to be born into?
Absolutely. It proves exactly that taqwa is a wide-open, brilliantly illuminated horizon available for you to walk toward. It operates as a profound, living cycle.
A cycle.
Yeah. Your sincere, true worship actively prepares your heart to receive divine guidance. That divine guidance then exponentially increases your taqwa, and that resulting taqwa ultimately protects you. Attaining taqwa here essentially means successfully building a robust, impenetrable internal shield. It is a vigilant, living guardian within your own heart that actively prevents you from sliding into the destructive hypocrisy and spiritual blindness we analyzed in those earlier passages.
A vigilant, living guardian stationed permanently in your own heart. I love that vivid, empowering visual. It perfectly illustrates that true religion is not just a dry, exhausting list of external rules you have to blindly memorize and robotically enforce to avoid punishment.
Exactly. It's so much more than that.
It is an active, dynamic defense system you painstakingly cultivate within yourself through sincere daily connection. It is exactly what keeps you steady, grounded, and sane when the inevitable, violent storms of life try to push you off your moral course. It is truly fascinating how the revelation patiently, methodically builds your psychological resilience up step by step so that you are actually strong enough to hold that heavy shield. But I want to point out a very specific, almost fragile, and incredibly nuanced word choice right before that glorious destination is mentioned. The verse deliberately uses the word perhaps, or that you may attain taqwa. Why isn't this glorious, life-saving result completely unconditionally guaranteed for you the exact moment you start going through the motions of worship?
Think about it this way. If a student simply physically sits in a classroom, occupies a desk, and blankly stares at the chalkboard for an hour, are they unconditionally guaranteed to learn the complex material?
Obviously not.
Worship is absolutely not a mechanical vending machine where you put in a coin of physical effort and righteousness automatically drops out. Simply performing the hollow outer shell of religious rituals does not automatically dispense the protection of taqwa into your life if your heart is entirely absent, distracted, or insincere. This actually completely exposes exactly why the hypocrites failed so miserably. They perfectly utilized the outer, visible image of worship, but because their internal sincerity was dead, it never produced that essential protective shield.
Wait, so the outward appearance of religion can actually be misused if that internal guardian isn't being built?
Yes, it can be entirely hollow and even spiritually dangerous. The specific use of the word la'ala, perhaps, or that you may, instills a deep, necessary, and humbling seriousness in you. It definitively shows that foundational worship must be entered truly, consciously, and with absolute raw authenticity. Only when you bring that undeniable internal sincerity to the table will the subsequent, highly detailed laws you encounter later in the revelation, like the rigorous command of fasting, which remarkably also ends with this exact same phrase, become a guiding light for you, rather than just a heavy, crushing burden.
That single word acts as an unyielding, brutally honest mirror held directly up to our hidden sincerity. It aggressively removes any false sense of religious entitlement. You quickly realize you can't just casually check the spiritual boxes and arrogantly demand the divine reward. You have to desperately show up mind, body, and soul entirely engaged.
Absolutely.
It demands a level of self-awareness that is intimidating to confront because you know deep down you can easily fool other people with your impressive outward actions, but you absolutely cannot fool the rigorous divine process of attaining taqwa. This is incredibly deep and demanding on a purely individual internal level. But let's boldly move the discussion outward, from the individual's hidden internal state to the broader, sweeping social and psychological impacts of what this single verse is doing to the human psyche and to society at large.
This verse actually establishes the absolute, only true foundation for genuine human unity. By intentionally starting with one single creator and one universally shared human root, it completely and permanently dismantles the poisonous ideologies of tribalism, racism, and class arrogance right at their very source.
Wow, okay.
But beyond the societal level, It performs a miraculous function on the individual psychological level. It cures the devastating fragmentation of the human ego.
Let's think about the profound psychology of someone trying to live their life without that single unifying center. Imagine that your modern smartphone has 20 different, incredibly heavy, data-intensive applications running in the background simultaneously.
That's a great visual.
Your battery is rapidly draining by the minute. The physical phone is growing dangerously hot in your hand, and eventually the entire operating system violently crashes because the processor is being pulled in far too many directions at once. Is this exhausting, frantic state exactly what the disease of hypocrisy essentially does to the human psyche? And is this verse offering the definitive solution to prevent that inevitable psychological crash?
That technological analogy perfectly captures the harsh psychological reality. Hypocrisy is, at its very core, a catastrophic flaw in servitude.
Right.
The hypocrite's soul is entirely shattered, constantly and exhaustingly trying to appease different societal groups, manage hidden personal desires, and outrun deep-seated fears, all at exactly the same time. True, sincere worship definitively and permanently unifies the chaotic interior of the human being. It cures that painful internal fragmentation because you finally have only one single center, one ultimate operating system that you actually have to answer to.
The sheer psychological relief of that internal unification must be absolutely incredible to experience. You realize you no longer have to painstakingly craft and wear a different, exhausting mask for your demanding boss, a totally different mask for your judgmental family, and yet another entirely fabricated mask for your online social circle.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
It really is. You are finally freed from the crushing burden of constantly managing a relentless PR campaign for your own fragile ego. You just have one single, unchanging standard, one merciful Lord, and one solid, authentic version of yourself to present to the world. It is a profound cure for the chronic, deeply embedded anxiety of modern life. It miraculously heals the shattered self simply by giving it a singular gravity.
Beautifully said.
But as we are looking closely at the brilliant language once again, I have to ask about a very subtle yet impactful linguistic choice. Why does the verse specifically choose to combine the incredibly intimate title of Lord with the sheer raw power of creating, rather than just simply calling him the creator and moving on?
Calling him creator only establishes the very beginning, the initial spark of your biological existence. But Lord, the deep concept of rubia we discussed, establishes his ongoing care, his daily guidance, and his active leadership in your life, right this very second.
Oh, I see the distinction.
The Qur'an brilliantly uses itself to explain itself here. By seamlessly weaving the initial act of physical creation with his ongoing lordship, the revelation perfectly prepares your mind and heart for the incredibly detailed, highly practical life instructions that will soon fill up the remainder of Surah Al-Baqarah. You're deeply willing to trust those complex laws because you already implicitly trust the ongoing, loving caretaker who issued them.
This has been a massive, deeply challenging philosophical and spiritual breakdown of a single verse. We have covered the sweeping history of humanity, the undeniable fact of our biological creation, the terrifying need for internal sincerity, and the beautiful concept of unifying our shattered psychological selves.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. But the most important question always remains for you, the listener. How do you take all of this towering theology and use it as a highly practical, reliable daily metric for your life right now? When you wake up tomorrow morning and your feet hit the floor, how does this actually tangibly change your daily behavior and your split-second decisions?
It immediately becomes a rigorous, deeply honest daily audit of your entire life. When your own personal interests violently and painfully clash with what you absolutely know in your heart to be the truth, who actually dictates your final decision in that exact moment of intense friction?
Right, that's the real test.
That single moment reveals exactly, undeniably, what you are actually worshiping. Living this internalized servitude creates a profound, quiet shyness before God within your soul and triggers a rapid retreat from your own blinding arrogance. Mere formal compliance just gives you an empty religious vocabulary to hide your ego behind. This verse, when truly internalized, is the ultimate reset button for your entire existence.
Thank you for walking us through that explanation. It really reframes everything.
My pleasure.
To bring it all together, this verse shifts us from being spectators to being directly addressed. It strips away our artificial identities, calling us back to our shared human root. It proves that true worship is the ultimate liberation from the exhausting pursuit of fake lords, and the only genuine path to building an internal shield of taqwa. So as you step away today, ask yourself, When the noise of the world gets loud and your own interests clash with the truth, what is the hidden Lord that actually dictates your choices?
That's the big question.
Thank you so much for joining us and lending us your ear today.
Thanks for listening.
That's it for this episode of Insights. If you found this reflection helpful, follow the show and join us next time as we continue verse by verse in the Quran. Until then, take one idea from this verse into your day.